Do you accept the mainstream media as your Lord and Savior?
No, I don't accept the mainstream media as my Lord and Savior. I
But
think
how? Why not, bro? How will you know what to believe then?
the thing is that, like, here's the thing. I feel like current affairs and like oh ye hua idhar oh udhar wo hua, it's just like glorified gossip. It's just like and don't get me wrong, I can enjoy some gossip. I enjoy myself a nice tea session, but it's gossip at the end of the day. So I prefer not to like really care too much about current. Like, I enjoy current affairs. Half the time on this podcast we talk about current affairs, but I don't take too much to heart. Like, I have a bit more of a philosophical worldview where I I run everything through like my nerdy philosophical filters first, and then I'm like, okay, I like this
I
argument.
agree with you, bro.
Yeah.
Politics as conveyed through mass media
Yeah.
is basically gossip for most people. Like, you can see in the way they treat it, like, oh, so, something happened. There was an assassination attempt
Yeah.
here, or there's some major corruption scandal here. You'll rage about it for a day. You'll talk to your friends about it. You'll post about it. You'll literally post about it in a story
Yeah.
right before you post your matcha latte.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's really not that serious to you.
Yeah.
Right? So then, you're taking a stance on grave corruption in the backwoods of some obscure province in our country, and then you're posting your matcha latte.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's that deep.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do
Like, politics
think.
is pretty performative,
Oh, it's absolutely performative.
and being interested in politics is also pretty performative. And that makes sense because we're pretty fucking performative. Like, we're performative enough to start a fucking podcast because we think
Yeah.
what we say matters.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean,
That's pretty performative.
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
And you know what?
I mean, imagine, bro, have you ever met those people who, like, they're like always talking about the political and social economic state of the world right now? Like,
Yeah.
Jane Smith.
Yeah.
And then they're so self-important, they
Yeah.
decide to put up a bunch of fucking cameras and record themselves talking and beaming it to the world.
Yeah, like us.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. So
Like us.
Yeah, my issue with politics, current affairs, and just like journalism and journalistic reporting in general is that it's mostly like gossip. And not to say that it doesn't have its value, absolutely it does. But I feel like if you don't have an ideological or philosophical filter to run that stuff through, you are at grave risk of just being a very, very convenient accessory to a policy or an agenda that you couldn't dream of wrapping your head around.
But look,
You get what I mean?
most people do not want to admit that they
Yeah.
don't have opinions of their own.
Yeah.
Most people do not want to admit that
Yeah.
if they tell you two of their beliefs, if they're liberals or conservatives, the next 10 of their beliefs.
Yeah.
There's actually research on this. We'll put it down
Yeah.
low. And people want to feel like they're free thinkers, right?
Yeah.
Say if you're a conservative, religious coded person,
Yeah.
you want to tell yourself you're noble for rejecting the hedonistic push of the times and being that way.
Yeah.
If you're a self-styled liberal and forward-thinking, you want to convince yourself you're like a child of you're like the Enlightenment's favorite child, right? And then you're like
you're one of the chosen ones who
Yeah, you're like-
illuminated.
yeah, and you think that trust the science, and you're like
Yeah.
so there's a lot of that, and people do not want to admit that is deeply tribal,
Yeah.
and we're all prone to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've all gone through those
Absolutely.
motions.
Absolutely.
But ultimately, are human beings capable of breaking that kind of binary? Of course they are.
Yeah.
And you have to have a certain level of you have to be a bit of a gooner, and you have to be kind of sincere and put in some work.
What do you mean, gooner sincere? Okay, what do you mean?
You have to be a sincere gooner, bro.
Yeah.
Like, remember
What
how
type of a gooner are we talking about?
remember when we were talking about like having good taste in like music?
Yeah.
And you were basically making the case that if someone says Taylor Swift is their favorite artist, after going through the entire like recent canon of music and they still settle on that, you'll respect it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the same way, like, don't tell me you're like I'm
Don't
like
tell me Tony Robbins is the most motivational man ever when you haven't opened a fucking page of a book in 10 years. Yeah, I get
or,
that.
or
Yeah.
even if you're like say deeper into, say you're like, you call yourself like a commie.
Yeah.
Okay, and you're like, I love Che Guevara. I'm a Stalinist.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. There may be certain it may tug on your heartstrings for some particular reason, right? There are leftist slogans that I find pretty motivating as well, right? But to truly say that that is your worldview,
Yeah.
there has to be some sort of process of elimination
Yeah.
that you have to go through in order to get there.
You should have had tasted the rainbow to decide which flavor is your favorite.
Yeah, and this doesn't mean that you read every single thing
Yeah.
ever.
You don't have to.
Right? You don't
Yeah.
have to.
But just steelman the opponent strong enough where it's like you can give a charitable interpretation of their worldview, and then maybe you decide that, oh shit, they have a point. Or maybe you decide that, okay, maybe they have a point, albeit I still think my side or whatever I'm on is the truth.
And dude, having the courage and the backbone to look a great thinker, an historic thinker in the eye and say that I have the self-esteem to take from you what I want and leave what I don't want.
Yeah.
And it is that process of elimination through which you don't settle on one or the other. You gather you're on like this hunter-gatherer thing, where you take like the root you want and the kind of wheat you want, and you set up your own little shack
Yeah.
in the corner of the primitive world,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's the kind of process that everyone deserves to have and will have if they work for it.
Yeah.
It's you could call it like Jung's individuation, or like, I don't know. There's a million names that people have probably given to it, but you see this in like the prophets of old. Everyone's going and pondering. They're looking inward.
Yeah.
They're doing a structural analysis of the world, and through some combination of assessing how the world is and looking deeply inward as well, looking within and without, they're reaching some sort of original conclusion.
Yeah.
Right? And the value isn't just in the fact that it's different from everyone else. You may reach some eternal truth that is a close approximation of your community. Right? I certainly have that as someone who like follows the most mainstream religion in my community, right? But did I have to go through a period of questioning and self-discovery in order to be where I am today? Yes.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think everyone needs to go down that road.
They need to have like a bit of more of a informed, more philosophical
Yeah,
perspective.
and to kind of bring it back to the media thing so that we just don't get lost in the sauce,
Yeah.
It's just that you've got, whatever, like CNN, Fox News binary, ARY, Geo News binary.
Yeah.
And like, to not lose yourself in one of those sides is actually very important.
Yeah.
Because, what does anti-establishment mean anywhere in the world, right? Most of the time, it's someone with a very punkish, self-important attitude telling themselves that they're not aligned with power.
Yeah.
And all the while,
I'm not in bed with the party that's 51%. I'm the one in bed with the one that's 49%. so I'm a dissident.
yeah, like my side gave $88 billion in the presidential campaign last year, but the other side gave 200 billion. So I'm with the little guy. I stand with the little guy. You know?
And that's kind of like the type of mindset that kind of plagues journalism as well. Because a lot of the
100%.
times the journalists, a lot of the times the truth tellers for society think that they are being dissidents, being anti-establishment, but really they are just serving a different establishment,
Bro,
a different power
always,
structure.
especially see in modern democracies, which are all oligarchies, right? Find me one meaningful democratic country that isn't oligarchic, right? The line between a political, military, business elite, everything is so blurred that it almost doesn't matter who's holding the reins of government at the time, because there's always a very powerful opposition conspiring to get them out of it, right? Or worse, there's a stable uniparty or ultra-powerful gang at the top that kind of never goes out of fashion and juggles you and yours.
I mean, we're literally seeing this in America right now, like Chomsky, Bannon, Chuddy Buddies, like who would have thought?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
We would have thought. We knew. We knew. No, but it's also, and actually to kind of bring that into the conversation, it's like, bro, we've been knowing about Pizzagate, bro. We've been talking about Epstein for years, bro.
Yeah.
Right? And generally, we are not of those who looked at like an Alex Jones and said that, oh, he's obviously crazy, right? No, right?
I found him to be fun. I thought that at certain point it was like pretty interesting.
Yeah, and look,
I mean, I grew up on The Arrival, so I was always kind of prone to this stuff.
yeah, we're not always like, we're not saying that, we necessarily believe like there's lizard people out there and like all of the tinfoil hat stuff, but this is what's important. It's not important that you believe everything that the WhatsApp auntie sends you.
Yeah.
What is important is that when someone comes to you with some kind of theory or idea that you find outlandish,
Yeah.
that you find stupid or low status,
Yeah.
right? If your reaction is one of disgust, if your reaction is, how could you possibly believe that? Like, that's so idiotic of you.
Yeah.
I think that is where you have to catch yourself,
Yeah.
right? I find myself doing this sometimes,
Yeah.
where if I see, like, if I'm flicking through the channels and if I see someone who I politically disagree with, I'm like, man, not this guy again.
Yeah.
And then I tell myself that it's probably there where I need to listen the most. If something truly irks you, like, jab cheez chupti hai na aapko,
Yeah. Then
that's when you need to listen.
Yep, I mean, that's knowledge. That's elite ball knowledge. I don't disagree with you there. Then, in terms of like, the vast majority of people who do not possess ideological worldview, they don't have a philosophical filter to run this stuff through. What do you think should be the solution to it? Because for me, the natural solution that makes sense to me to be able to reckon with all of these different ideas without getting lost in the sauce is to have some sort of a academically oriented philosophical filter, because then you're not just playing tribalism, you kind of understand, because what is philosophy ultimately? Philosophy is ultimately the pursuit of trying to understand the world as it is and as it should be, rather than, oh, this side did this, this side did that, and gossiping. So, and you see this even, like, I feel like the most important people in the world, the most important, the movers and shakers of culture, so to say, they are philosophically inclined people. And they're not necessarily picking sides and getting into this partisan. The higher you go at the top, the more ideological it gets. So I'm not saying that we should always take what the most powerful people in the world are doing and try to emulate it. Definitely not, given the Epstein thing, but I do think there's some degree of knowledge you can gain from the fact that you can get some really elite ball knowledge from this. What do you think about that?
No, look, I think it's kind of always been the case that people, whether through learned philosophy or lived philosophy, people with very considered and sophisticated worldviews
Yeah.
have left lasting impacts on humankind.
Yeah.
So let's completely secularize history for a moment.
Yeah.
Right? For those in academia who consider the mystics and the prophets of the past to be non-divine figures,
Yeah.
for them to be secular teachers or men of this world,
Yeah. Or political leaders.
or political leaders,
yeah.
however you want to characterize them, those were still men who had deeply philosophical worldviews.
Yeah.
They weren't necessarily getting into like ontological arguments and something that's very complex. They weren't writing tomes like Kant or, cultural commentaries like Slavoj Žižek or whatever.
Yeah.
They didn't exist on that spectrum, right? But
They did exist on an ideological.
their ideas,
deeply ideologically motivated
everything they said had some deep ideological significance to it.
Yeah.
There's a reason why the first philosophers, so many of them were theologians, right?
Yeah.
And there was essentially no difference between the two.
Philosophy in many ways is downstream. From
It is,
theology.
absolutely,
really is.
absolutely.
Yeah.
At some point, it's almost inseparable,
Yeah.
right? Even like the more modern cases, even like the Deleuze and Guattaris and Nick Lands of the world, are in so many ways theological, because even though they're not appealing to an Abrahamic God, if you're appealing to like this, ravaging non-human intelligence that approaches like these demiurgic qualities,
Yeah.
again, you're couching your words and your work in some sort of ideological framework,
Yeah.
right? And I always I used to like kind of use this for shorthand, where I'd be like, yes, in the short term and the medium term, geostrategic considerations and money trails, these things are the primary movers and shakers of your world. But on the century, millennia time scale,
It's
it's
ideas.
always ideas,
Yeah.
right? Ultimately, what draws like the trails in the sand that eventually all your money and your resources and your geostrategy follows
Yeah.
is also ideological, religious, political frameworks
Yeah.
uh, that have been uh, uh, built atop in a very typical conservative sense. You stand atop the shoulders of giants, as Edmund Burke would say, uh, in which you see the genealogy of these ideas, the etymology of these ideas being built up for the past couple of thousand years.
Yeah.
Uh, they've all got very distinctive lineages.
Yeah.
So, but again, to kind of like harp back to the media stuff, it's if you don't have this kind of uh, stable core or this worldview or some sense of identity that isn't born directly from the binary that you exist in, uh, you will always inadvertently serve power.
Yeah.
So, for example, um, you know, in the US, if your entire thing is, um, oh, post Epstein files, we've had a lot of people in the private sector resigning, but there's no action in the public sector. And that means the Republicans are corrupt. Like, there's no way that's your takeaway from this.
Yeah.
There's no way that's your takeaway from this, as opposed to the larger characterization that this is the oligarchy at work.
Yeah.
Your system is built for this to happen. This is not an accident.
Yeah.
And this is going to continue happening until you have major and total upheaval of everything.
Yeah.
Right? And in the mainstream, at least.
Yeah.
So CNN, Fox News are not talking about this, obviously.
Yeah.
Right? Then you have like more independent outlets. You've got the Glenn Greenwalds and the Breaking Points, and they're going really hard on the Epstein stuff.
Yeah.
No holds barred, and I think they're sincere about it.
Yeah.
But are their conclusions, the implications of everything they're saying are very much, oh, we need to, neoliberal ideas of like holding people accountable and the system needs to work and the judiciary needs to be fixed, which are all, these are not fixes, these are all end goals.
Yeah.
Right? And they're proposing no machine on how to get there. And they're ultimately paying lip service and aspiring to those same wispy ideas that led to the creation of this corrupt system in the first place.
Yeah.
Right? That's the issue. And until you have a truly independent philosophical approach to things, you're never going to reach the post-political. And that's what we need to do to make a dent in the world, is to
Yeah.
reach the post-political.
Yeah.
Same thing in Pakistan.
Yeah.
Right? And maybe we can cut this out later. But even in Pakistan, right?
Nobody's ideological.
No, there is no such thing as ideology. This is what I keep telling people. That I don't know if this is a gift or a curse, but in Pakistan, we essentially have no ideological spectrum.
Yeah.
Even the party that calls itself the secular party says our religion is Islam, right? So we're all kind of in unanimity. We have a consensus
Yeah.
of what the basis of our state is, Islamic Republic of Pakistan, right? There's no serious challenge to that. And I'm not saying there should be. I'm in line with that too. My point being that when it comes to, say,
There's
after,
no long-term vision about it.
Bro,
There's no long-term vision about it.
there isn't. Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
say post 2011.
Like on the furthest end of the religious spectrum, they still talk about the Riyasat-e Medina, and all respect to that, of course, always. But there should also be a futuristic imagination of how can we, we can't ever go back in time. We can't ever make the norms and the policies of that time. We can't enact them in the modern world.
And
We
so,
have
yeah,
to
what is the
use that-
futuristic Riyasat-e Medina,
What's the
essentially?
futuristic vision of that?
Yeah.
And even on the more lip end of the spectrum, it's like, your genius solution, which is like, let's end feudalism, let's give it to the banks. That type of like,
Yeah.
totally GDP maxing type of attitude, do as thou wilt, like, very, very British liberal, classical liberal type of idea. So
And like the
they
European
lack-
Union and IMF's idea of democracy and trade is like,
there's pretty much an ideological staleness where I feel like I feel for the most part Pakistan has been a country which has been cursed with like very little ideological and philosophical vigor. But two people who I do think that embodied that a little bit, like, was Zulfikar Ali Bhutto and Ziaul Haq. They stand out in history, and I feel like to this day, and why I say that, I think at the highest levels, the people who move and shake cultures the longest tend to be ideological and philosophical minds, is because those two guys represented that. To this day, we talk about, I mean, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto was famously like, an Islamic socialist. Uh, he followed through on that with like nationalization. You know what I mean? Yes, politics is a give and take, like you like to say, but at the end of the day, he did hold that ideology on his sleeves. And even the OIC, we still talk about the OIC, some of his UN speeches, Roti Kapra Makan. So to this day, like the real ideological minds have the power to galvanize society and move it in a certain direction.
So no, both of them had that power and they did that. My only issue, uh, so they meet that standard to some extent.
Yeah.
My issue with engineering Pakistan towards the post-political is that, for example, uh, after the early 2010s,
Yeah.
there was near unanimity on 18th Amendment consensus.
Yeah.
Okay, no one's challenging the 18th Amendment, provincial shares, etc. Let's ignore the fact that it straddled our entire country with enormous amount of debts, and the federal government cannot hope to pay it back, and you have provincial surpluses every other year. We're supposed to ignore all that because this is now the new standard for democracy, apparently. Uh, and for people who manage to break that orthodoxy, they go to the other side, which is like federalize everything, right? And then it's like, okay, I'm like a high level thinker. I don't get stuck up in one amendment or the other. Then it's like, okay, the most serious grounds of engagement you can imagine are like now the civil military binary. It's like,
Yeah.
that is not the post political,
Yeah.
right? And I don't see any reason why. And then someone's going to say, well, what is the post political then?
Yeah.
Why can't Pakistan be the laboratory for the post political?
Yeah.
Right?
What is
Why
the
can't-
post-political in your opinion?
No,
What does the post-political mean for you?
post-political simply means that you reject the dominant axioms of the time and you refuse to engage in this paradigm. So, for example,
okay.
you say that if someone tries to foist upon you, if someone says we need to fix Pakistan, and the way to do that is we don't have a first principles debate. We talk about whether or not we need to fix the NFC award. Don't get me wrong, that is incredible in today's limited possibilities.
Yeah.
Right? Fixing the NFC award, as is our federal government is trying to do at this point, is important. I'm not saying it isn't. In today's limited possibilities, to figure out the civil military binary is important. I'm not saying those things aren't important.
Yeah.
What I am saying is that that is not a first principles discussion of Pakistan, right? Couching Pakistan in terms of a compromise that incorporates Islamic values on a neoliberal democracy is not a first principles discussion.
Yeah.
Right? So for me, the post-political is one that doesn't hold any vague presentism. Presentism being the dominant ideas of the time as completely sacred. Anything man-made as completely sacred. So if someone comes and tells you that first past the post elections and universal suffrage first past the post is just, something that we can't challenge in Pakistan. I want you to treat that person like they're crazy, right? I don't want you to treat someone who questions that as crazy, right? My point being, the first thing is you need to take that shock and awe thing away when someone comes and proposes something radically different to you that is unrecognizable when you compare it to 21st century democracy. You need to stop being a bitch about it.
Yeah.
Right? And being like, how could you, like, dude, the whole democracy is a religion thing, like, I'm tired of it, bro.
Yeah.
For me, that is the first step to the post-political. So when I say the post-political, I'm not saying I've got the entire thing figured out. I'm saying the conversation needs to advance there. So our opinion makers, who are essentially, defenders of democracy, or then they're talking about administrative efficiency, and that's like the end-all, be-all for them.
Yeah.
Do you think that these people can make a serious dent without having like an independent, serious worldview to back all of these things?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I feel like, once again, these are very, very important and relevant people who play, and genuinely, I don't mean this in any type of disparaging way. They play a very, very important role in the machine, but definitely they are not the most important.
But yes,
They're not
they
the
are the
consequential.
machine. They are
They're,
they
they're
are
part of the
cogs.
machine. They're cogs, and
Yeah.
cogs are important. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's not that I want like journalism to be gone. It's not that I want like political gossip to be gone. But I do think that on the highest echelons of things, things need to be more philosophical. Things need to be more ideological. Why I say this is because here's the thing: the people who move and shake society and really push cultures in certain directions, right? They're almost always philosophical minds. Like if you look at America, right? George Soros, Peter Thiel, Charles Koch, Elon Musk, pretty much all pretty philosophically inclined
Go
people.
go in some detail. Tell us this because I think people don't realize. Like I knew about Thiel and Soros and their philosophical background.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how deep Koch's was. So tell us.
Bro,
Yeah.
Koch is basically, he's a philosophy major, he's a philosophy graduate. He owns the biggest private company in the world. Him and his brother combined worth about 130, 140 billion, some retarded number like that. I mean, Charles Koch is pretty much a day one Austrian school libertarian gooner. Like, the biggest libertarian think tank in the world, the Cato Institute, he made it. He funded it.
You know, I actually didn't know that. I'm familiar with the Kochs and I'm familiar with the Cato Institute. I didn't know he was behind it.
And he's extremely ideological, even in the way he runs his business. Like he's so like the government should stay out of business. So what do I do? Is that government can't tell me what to do. I'm gonna pollute shit out of this river, and the government can fine me, and I have no problem with that. I'll pay the fine, but I'm not gonna stop doing it because I'm that deep in my rabbit hole.
Like
About
imagine
Yeah,
you
yeah.
you want private enterprise to be deregulated so bad that you spend billions of dollars essentially creating a new libertarian ideology to make that possible.
Yeah, that's pretty much what Charles Koch is. I
Yeah.
mean, he funded like the modern conception of libertarianism. All is downstream from the work Charles Koch did. Peter Thiel in the same way. Now, Peter Thiel was the first of the Silicon Valley boys to say that I'm going to put my cards behind Trump. Now, actually, he doesn't support Trump anymore. He didn't even partake in the recent election. But in 2016, he was the guy who spearheaded Silicon Valley move to the right,
But
and
he put Vance up.
he put Vance up. He put
Yeah.
Vance up right now. But even once again, now you look at historically what Peter Thiel has been up to. Peter Thiel is a philosophy graduate who studied under Rene Girard, who's one of the greatest philosophers of the second half of the
20th century.
20th century. And from day one, he's been pretty ideological. Like he was banging on about woke in the 90s at Stanford campuses. You know what I mean?
And he's written some serious essays as well. I read some of them.
Yeah. I mean, some of them are pretty decent. Like, I mean, his business book, 0 to 1, is pretty decent. But even the Straussian moment, he's a big Leo Strauss guy. Leo Strauss is also, I mean, I'm not very, very familiar with Leo Strauss. I know a little bit. But once again, a philosophical titan. Coming back to Peter Thiel, now the entire neo-right is a Peter Thiel creation. Bronze Age pervert Curtis Yarvin are two of the most influential intellectual minds in the new right scene. But all of them, I mean, both of them are pretty directly bankrolled by Peter Thiel. You know what I mean? So you don't have to agree or disagree with what these guys stand for. Point is that on the highest echelon of thing, the movers and shakers are keeping deeply ideological, philosophical worldviews. On the other end of the spectrum, you got on the left end of the spectrum, you have a guy like George Soros, Open Societies Foundation. So who's been pushing very, very ideologically left-leaning, one world, transnational globalist type of ideas.
It's very ideological. Deeply ideological.
It's deeply
And do you think
ideological.
at some point, like, it's not even a coincidence, it's not an accident that all of these people are deeply philosophical? And there's like a few layers to this, right?
Yeah.
One, it could just be that these kinds of minds that are destined to make it big, they're inevitably attracted to systems thinking.
Yeah.
Right? And so they get into this world of ideas.
Yeah.
Right? Then there's also the structural reality of the world. So unlike the prophets and philosophers of old, great men and women today are vetted through these Ivy Leagues and Oxbridges.
Yeah.
And it is inevitable that they'll go through these ideological filters. So, for example, whether you're studying PPE at Oxford,
Yeah.
right? Philosophy, politics, and economics,
Yeah.
right? If you know that you need to do this degree in order to be a peer competitor to aspire to high office in the UK, right? Or you need to study like classics at Oxbridge.
Yeah.
You're
Boris
gonna go
Johnson, yeah.
through this, which is this broader universe of philosophical ideas and like philosophy goonerism
Yeah.
in order to get there.
Yeah.
So you're kind of structurally set up in a way that people who are aspiring to high political office, high governmental office, inevitably go through this filter of ideas in which they're given this universe of
Absolutely.
thinking.
Absolutely. Put it into perspective, not every philosophy gooner is going to be a mover and shaker, but almost every mover and shaker is tangentially or is
Yeah.
deeply a philosophy
Yeah.
gooner. Because, like you were talking about, to have a post political imagination, you need to be able to reckon with things on first principles, and nothing teaches you how to reckon with first principles the way philosophy does. You know? So, we're talking about this, outrage farming, where I might be like, the average rightoid looks at something what the left is saying. And if you just took away the left aesthetics and the left ideology and the left entire product, he might probably be agreeing with it. But because he doesn't have a preset philosophical filter to view it through, he gets louche farmed pretty hard by it, He doesn't have a philosophical
Can you
filter.
explain what louche farming is?
So louche farming is basically like this occult type idea, where it's actually an occult idea, where it's like they're non-human entities that feed on human anxieties and human emotions and human fears, and this is what actually is the engine that runs the world. And this is actually how economies also technically work. Our social media economy is run on the basis of louche farming. It's like, let me scare the shit out of these people. And louche farming doesn't have to always be like negative. It's just drawing an emotion out of people. So that's kind of what louche farming is: drawing reaction, monetizing reactions, and most of the time it's a negative reaction, because negative reaction is just
So like
more
is
profitable.
rage bait a form of louche
Rage bait,
farming?
it's like it's
Are we
it's
louche farming people?
honestly, a lot of the time,
Sometimes?
a lot of
Oh.
times, even if you don't mean to do it, it is going to happen. And the thing is that it's not that you are inevitably
Guys, I
gonna-
didn't mean to perform rituals on the viewers
Here's
of the
thing,
burger
here's
shop,
the thing.
man.
It's inevitable that people are going to get louche farmed. Everything can be louche farming. I can see some homeless guy on the street, and if he really, really pisses me off in some way, he's all louche farming me, even though he doesn't mean it. The point is, if you have a high enough level of first principles thinking, you can kind of avoid it, and you can kind of avoid these extreme binaries of like, I'm right, I'm left, I'm lib, I'm conservative. You know what I mean?
So, what this makes you think of?
yeah.
There is something that good people can learn from the Epstein files.
Yeah.
Like, if you aspire to truly do good in the world, the one thing you should learn from the Epstein class is to not be shocked by anything anymore.
Yeah.
Don't clutch your pearls.
Yeah.
Don't give like a prissy, oh my god, how dare you kind of reaction to
Yeah.
things. If you notice, the Epstein class, in obviously a negative way, nothing shocks them. Like, obviously, they take it in a very ugly direction where they're committing great moral misdeeds, actual unimaginable levels of crime, and
Yeah.
the positive mirror of this, they're the psychopaths, and the good people are potentially the schizos.
Yeah.
Who are also unemotional and unawed by these things,
Yeah.
right? So, what the good person needs to be not shocked by is radical new ideas on
Yeah.
how to fix things,
Yeah.
or radical old ideas on how to fix things,
Yeah.
right? So I definitely think that there's an attitude adjustment angle to be taken from that tippy top of the ruling class.
Absolutely. And in terms of the attitude adjustment of the ruling class, I mean, look, obviously, a lot of it is pretty rage baity, and it's difficult not to get rage baited by some of it. But the fact that Chomsky and Steve Bannon can sit down and be like, hey, listen, we can share a drink, we can take pictures together, doesn't mean that their ideological motivations and philosophical motivations are phony. I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think they're definitely deeply into the ideas they talk about. But on the highest enough levels now, there's a degree of philosophical and intellectual security where it's like, I can actually engage with somebody who stands deeply with the exact opposite of what I believe in, and we can look eye to eye on certain
That
things.
is actually
Because we are
something to be
both-
aspired to.
Yeah, and we are. If there's one positive thing in
Yeah,
a weird way I can
yeah.
take away, it's this, where it's like, well, if these guys who are absolute ideological titans, intellectual titans, can sit down and be like, hey, listen, you know what? I have a certain filter, you have a certain filter. We probably look eye to eye on a lot of things. We're kind of wanting the policy enactment of it to be kind of different. why the are you retards like getting into these stupid
Bro, like
things?
if anyone on the right is telling you Steve Bannon is terrible for meeting Chomsky or vice versa, like do not listen to that person.
Yeah.
That is perhaps one of the only things that you can take away that's kind of positive. From
That's
this.
kind of
I mean, not
positive.
the context in which is like Epstein rated or
Yeah.
whatnot, goes without saying. But like, bro, even in Pakistan, where it's like, I'm like, dude, I don't know how many people watching will have direct access to ex-minister or MNA or MP. And it's like, yeah, these guys are at each other's throats on TV in front of you. Or do you not see them at every wedding, arm in arm,
Yeah, they're
shero
all friends.
shakkar,
They're
bro?
all friends. Like
Bro, they're all
I'm not friends.
they're
They
real,
actually have a friendly relationship with each other.
bro, or they're really close friends, or they're like cousins or whatever.
Yeah.
It's all just one big crew, bro.
Yeah.
And the answer to that is not that, oh, they're so phony, we can't respect them anymore. It's like, no, you also adopt that level of critical distance with your ideas at some point,
Yeah,
right? At the end
absolutely.
of the day, yeah, like at the burger shop, yeah, we do a bit of like, we troll the libs a little bit, okay? We'll
Yeah.
pull the conservative legs a little bit too, but at the end of the day, we don't want to become Iran, where like half the population literally cannot look the other in the eye. We don't
Absolutely
want
not.
to be that.
Absolutely not.
Pakistan should never be that.
And it weakens the country. And this is why, like, coming back to it, right? But it's fair to say that we fall on the right end of spectrum.
Yeah,
You know what I
100%.
mean? Maybe to different degrees. Maybe I'm more right lib. You're maybe more right con. You know?
Yeah, fair.
Either way, we fall on the right end of spectrum. I don't see any point of genuinely antagonizing maybe and sometimes we do it like with one of our recent posts. I don't see any utility in antagonizing an entire sect of our people, be it the more left-leaning secular lib people, because ultimately they are our compatriots. And secondly, man, these people they're not stupid. They are intellectually inclined, they are ideological in some ways, and whether you like it or not, a lot of them will end up in influential roles and influential places one day.
I think, but like
And
the answer
I
to
would
that,
rather build bridges with people like them. Where it's like, hey, honestly, a lot of us can see eye to eye on a lot of things. I envision a world where, there's a Shehzad Ghias and even someone like you can have things in common. You know what I mean?
no, and we will. It's not that we won't. Like, listen, at the end of the day, you want like a bare minimum of a society where everyone can at least live together, eat together. At the end of the day, like like for example, we made that Mufti Shamail Javed Akhtar
Yeah.
video.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, those guys went and had dinner together after,
Yeah.
right? Plus, like, ultimately, I would like a Pakistan where people have thicker skin.
Yeah.
We can make a bit of fun of each other. We can troll each other a little bit. We can make jokes about each other, right? I don't think that should go away. I don't think it should be a very formal, prim and proper relationship. It should be an ultimately respectful one.
Yeah.
Or one that ultimately acknowledges the humanity or necessity or whatever you want to call it of the other side, if you really want to call it that, right? But like, we were talking about this the other day, where it's like the spectrum in Pakistan, even it really is not that like broad in the sense that take like Lollywood, for example.
Yeah.
On the one hand, you've got a very large portion of the Pakistani population saying, ye Lollywood wale jahannami hai, they should go to hell, and they're sinning and whatnot. And I understand the sentiment from, a lot of the times Lollywood veers into things that are not representative of Pakistan's local culture and values. At the same time, ironically, a lot of the people in Lollywood are actually, those same people are pretty conservative coded in what they profess.
Yeah.
They're actually religious, like in their personal lives,
Yeah.
right? I'm not justifying one side or the other over here, right? I'm just saying ultimately, like our Overton window hasn't radically degenerated to the point where we can't live together,
Yeah.
and it shouldn't.
And we don't want it to. Most importantly, we don't want it to. Like we should basically what we should do is that we should give our lib brothers a hug and be like, hey, listen,
Yeah.
around sometimes, but we're kind of on the same page in a lot of things.
Yeah,
At least in terms, at the very least, in terms of we both recognize the need for freshness, and we recognize the need for things got to change a little bit. We've got to kind of
and
come up with
generally, like,
something.
I mean, one of our overarching messages tends to be um, getting out of factionalism.
Yeah.
That applies equally to left, right, center,
Absolutely.
everyone.
Yeah.
Right? That means that if you're by accident centrist, you reach that conclusion on your own.
Yeah.
Right? If you're like, don't be a globalist lib just because like the World Economic Forum, some think tank told you to be, right?
Yeah.
Be based about it. Find your own opinions. Fine, maybe you still end up having some sympathies with XYZ cause, right?
Yeah.
But like, in my opinion, be a base lefty. Don't be like, oh, I love the think tank.
Yeah.
I love
Honestly,
the-
should I tell you
like-
something? Recently, I've been straw manning the hell out of neoliberalism, and there's an argument that can be made that it is borderline perfect as an ideology, borderline perfect as a way of actually running
I'd love
society.
to hear this.
No, I mean, think about it like this. It is infinitely flexible in terms of what it allows into the Overton window, provided you don't go too far with some hate speech type stuff. Infinitely flexible. Everyone has the marketplace of ideas is pretty vast. You see rightoids, leftoids, everyone kind of. There's a huge diversity of thought in the entire neoliberal experiment. Economically, nobody can deny how fucking brilliant it is, because if you've told the entire society that, listen, your individual life is and bettering it is the telos of your existence, everyone will strive to a certain degree. And because every individual micro member is striving so much, you will generate a lot of wealth, a lot of economic benefits, and you will be a pretty stable, strong society where because your power structure is not so centralized, it's pretty decentralized. If you cut the head off, you don't kill the machine, because there's always somebody ready to step up. And this is what we talk about in a place like America, right? There's multiple establishments. You've got the George Soros neo-lib guys, you've got, the Peter Thiel rightoids, you've got the libertarian Charles Koch types, so you have multiple deeply accomplished, deeply ideological thinkers on different ends of the spectrum. So if one head of the Hydra is killed, the other one can just step up pretty comfortably and take the role in. And I think
But like
that is unique to neoliberalism.
But I mean, neoliberal social attitudes,
yeah.
institutionalized, are DEI and cancellation-based wokeness.
But how?
So how is it incorporating a broad
here's the
range of
thing,
ideas?
But that's look how flexible it has been towards that, because there was a huge market reaction to that wokeness and stuff like that, and as a result, wokeness has gone down.
But
People
that's
are-
but yeah,
people
but
are-
the, but that's not that hasn't been broken down by anything. That's
It's broken down a
neoliberal.
lot. It's broken down a lot.
Yeah, but
I mean,
let
compared
me-
to
let me-
wait, let me finish. Compared to like 2017, 2018, Disney has been told like, hey, listen, the
Yes,
market
but
says
not by
this fucking
neoliberals.
sucks.
But not by neoliberals.
I'm not saying
The class that has broken it down couches itself and is, I mean, exemplified by the recent Trump and Rubio affronts to the neoliberal world order. That entire logic that is opposed and broken down, that neoliberal prissiness, has been in direct vocal opposition to neoliberalism. That's not something that neoliberalism has accommodated. It's something that has resulted in destruction of the neoliberal order.
I disagree entirely, because neoliberalism, first and foremost, stands for the market is always right. The market said that, hey, listen, the rightoids have a point, and the neoliberal system allows a rightoid faction to exist. Let's say a commie Russia would have never allowed a righty faction like that to exist. You couldn't make openly like Christian Zionist type statements and stuff in like commie Russia.
No,
Or
but
a
I mean,
bit
this
more
is not. Do you think America exists and is now not breaking away from the neoliberal world order?
No, absolutely not. I think they're going harder into it.
Tariffs.
Tariffs is one thing, but
But
once
no,
again,
it's the biggest thing.
It is, but
It is quite literally the biggest
but
economic component
But let's
of it.
not be slave to the current thing, right? Don't
No,
you
it's
think-
not slave to the current.
no,
That's
I
the
have a
definition
question,
of the thing.
You don't think the other side-
reshoring industry, tariffs.
But that's a market correction, right? But that's the market saying, hey, listen, there's a economic need for us to.
Something being market based is not the same as it being neoliberal at all. This
But
is
neoliberalism.
that's like definitionally that's not it.
No, definitionally, neoliberalism puts the market first and foremost. Market logic comes first and foremost. Market logic dictates that we need to reshore a little bit. Market logic dictates that we cannot allow too much DEI wokeness. We need to get out of it.
That's
Today,
not.
okay,
That's not
today
it. That's
Gavin
not
used
it.
some.
That-
You see,
no,
Gavin
that's
used-
not it.
No, that's
No,
literally.
That's not
I mean,
it at
agree
all.
to disagree.
No, I
Gavin-
mean definitionally that's not it. The
Can I-
entire neoliberal.
Okay, what do you think about Gavin
So
Newsom?
is
Okay, I
the
have a
World
question,
Trade
I have a
is the
question.
World Trade Organization
Yeah.
the exemplification of neoliberal order?
It's part of it. I don't know if it's exemplification.
Of course it is.
part
WTO
of it.
WTO trade liberalization.
Yeah.
IMF aid extension.
Yeah.
Developmental agencies. All of these things, USAID. This is the heft and weave. This is what the neoliberal world order is.
Yeah.
And that is what is being actively
Do you think
rolled back.
do you think globalism and global trade and global economic integration is going away? I don't think it is. It's still there. It's still pretty strong. What America is
USA
about to do in Iran
has USA
is
not
literally
been-
a justification of the neoliberal worldview as alive and kicking in America.
No,
Absolutely.
I mean, okay, Trump is saying explicitly, and Rubio is saying that this rules-based world order, which is the liberal part of the neoliberal world order, it always
Yeah.
has been, that's
Yeah.
undeniable, is over, and we're not going to respect that anymore, and that it is a myth. They're saying it, they're acting accordingly, but you're saying that that is a part of the logic of neoliberalism?
That is very much a part of the logic of liberalism, neoliberalism. But I mean,
Okay,
that's
what
the thing.
isn't part of the logic of neoliberalism?
Uh,
Because that way you can incorporate anything in it then.
that's its f***ing power.
no,
that's
then
the
it's just-
power of it. That's
not it, then
literally
it's
the power
not
of it.
neoliberal.
It's inherently flexible. Here's the thing.
No,
Okay,
first
I have a
you made a
question.
definitional error by saying that market first.
Google
is,
it right
yeah,
now?
please- yeah, go ahead. I mean, like, this, you can't argue this away. It's like, this is textbook. This is textbook, bro. Like,
Should I just Google it right
go,
now?
please go ahead.
Neoliberalism is a dominant 20th century economic and political ideology advocating for free market capitalism, minimal government intervention, privatization, deregulation, and austerity.
Exactly.
It emphasizes individual freedom and efficiency, promoting competition as the optimal way to organize society, but has been criticized for increasing inequality and shifting power to corporation.
Exactly.
Okay, no, exactly. Like, okay,
yeah.
both of
so
us
what are
should-
tariffs?
Here's the thing.
What are the first thing it said? Free markets.
Yes, free
Tariffs
market
don't violate
capitalism.
that.
No, but also the part of tariff. What's going to happen when Trump gets then when if the Republican Party gets out of power in 2 years from now, which is looking increasingly likely? What happens then? They roll back on the tariffs, and didn't the f***ing Congress literally just
So-
say that tariffs are unconstitutional and you can't? They're not going through
I mean,
with them.
Congress is not responsible for doing that. It's the Supreme Court, and they're not going to rule on it.
I-
but
we don't know. Look, look, I'm just trying to.
I mean,
straw man.
that's
Look,
all
free market-
irrelevant to the point
ultimately-
that
ultimately, I have a question.
the side
Ultimately-
calling itself,
Yeah.
opponents of the neoliberal world order, declaring literal war on it. Canadian Prime Minister doing the same thing. All of them coming out and saying explicitly
Yeah.
that this is not viable. This has always been a myth. We challenge rules-based order. We're putting out tariffs. We're creating an American sovereign wealth fund, and we're going to dive into the market from the government directly. Whether it gets rolled back eventually or not and neoliberalism bounces back is another thing.
Yeah.
Is this neoliberalism? Of course it's not neoliberalism. This is an attack. It's a full frontal attack on neoliberalism. And will it...
No, because I think ultimately neoliberalism is still defined by market logic. And if the market logic is saying we need to onshore, we need to do some of these things, that's market logic. If the market logic is saying that DEI, wokeness is not good for business, that's market logic. Ultimately,
No,
individuals...
that's not market
but
logic.
still, here's the thing.
That's not market.
That is literally market logic. The market is saying this is not spelling.
Explain to me explicitly how it is, then I'll tell you exactly firm-wise why it's not, why it's literally the opposite. The entire idea of it, the reason it's not market logic is market logic would dictate cheaper costs, so market logic would dictate make in China, right?
But
The
market
logic here
no,
is this is people-centric. It is moving it back. The entire, like, if you look at that Besant interview, for example, that I was talking about, his entire thing is that quantitative easing and the post-2008 scenario and the integration of China into world trade in the 1990s is the origin of inequality and offshoring of businesses in the United States. And that they're challenging of this rules-based order in which they're leaving, it's all thematically consistent now. They're leaving human rights councils, they're rejecting, they're rolling back US aid. So the biggest arms of US neoliberal, neo-imperialism are being rolled out by people who are saying we reject the neoliberal world order. To say that that is neoliberal is...
I think to a big degree it's lip service because once again, look at immigration. Like immigration, if that's a neoliberal, it's an anti-neoliberal take. Immigration was highest ever under Obama. You know, I think a lot, too big.
But I'm not talking about Obama. I'm talking about post-2017.
Yeah, my thing
Yeah.
is that ultimately it's still prioritizing market logic. I think it's economically more viable today to onshore a lot of industry, so it's going to do it. In terms of the individual,
How is it more economically viable?
because
It's not.
No, because you are looking at the precipice of war, and market logic dictates that China holds too much of our debt. So it's actually not a wise thing to be keep sending and putting our balls in their hands. So we're going to onshore it. It's still
That's political logic. That's not market logic.
that is, but the political economy is on the highest end of the things, the political logic and market logic are kind of interlinked.
But then
especially when you're,
that definition doesn't hold.
no, but the definition does hold, right? Because the definition ultimately says individualism, market logic, these type of things. We can talk about explicit instances about Trump is doing this and doing that, but the capitalistic system, the neoliberal capitalistic system, which also includes the neocons. Ultimately, the neocons are also part of that same framework, part of that neoliberal framework. The difference between neocons and neoliberals is like neoliberals are like, hey, let's not go to war. The neocons are like, hey, no, let's go to war. But ultimately, they're kind of agreeing on it.
No, there's
we've talked
definitely
about this a
intersection
million
there,
times,
100%.
You know what I mean?
No, I'm not saying
Coming
there
back
isn't.
to my argument is that when you look closely enough, right, it's a very, very potent system, and it has intellectual merit. And here's it. Coming back to what you were saying is that, okay, don't be a neoliberal because the banks told you. And honestly, I don't like neoliberalism. I think it's fucking ugly. My big issue with neoliberalism is that it commodifies everything and it creates shitty culture, shitty music, and shitty art. That's my main issue with neoliberalism. But just as a pure economic political system, it's pretty fucking undefeated, bro. It took down fascism, it took down Nazism, it took down communism, it's taken down everything that's come in its path, and it's infinitely flexible. You think China or communist Russia could ever deal with the internal dissent and internal polarization that happens in America today? Absolutely not. But because the neoliberal system, I'm not talking about specific policy matters, I'm just saying the neoliberal ideology is so inherently
100%.
flexible, it kind of accommodates everyone. The fact that someone like Zoran Mamdani, who is an Islamist advocating for LGBTQ, that's not possible anywhere other than a neoliberal system, because that is market logic, because that has a market. That can work. That was not possible over here. I'm not saying that to say that no, neoliberalism is amazing, but just straw man its intellectual merits. It's very tough to make an argument that it isn't borderline perfect. It pretty much works for everything.
Agree to disagree.
I mean, it makes the richest country in the world, most powerful country in the world, the most wealth in the world, the most technologically innovative country in the world.
Yeah, but
those are merits that we can't not contend with,
100%,
you know what I mean?
100%. But like the argument started with accommodating people and opinions, which is manifestly untrue. I mean, is modern England neoliberal?
I mean, we're sticking to America for the conversation.
No, but there's a neoliberal world order. It's not just America.
Current Britain is a vassal state. It's a vassal state that it's a glorified
No,
vassal
but
state.
the rest with the tweets and like it's pretty crazy down there.
I still think that their legacy lies more in classical liberalism, where they're still operating in that pre-World War II ideology.
Yeah,
and
but one of the precepts of classical liberalism is the kind of free speech where they're kind of violating.
never. Classical liberalism was never that deep on that. Classical liberalism.
Bro, what are you talking about?
No, absolutely.
The foundations of classical liberalism are freedom of conscience, freedom of organization, movement, speech.
But a big part of the classical liberalism stuff is also utilitarianism, which is one of the most important. The three pillars of classical liberalism are empiricism, skepticism, and utilitarianism. But in terms of utilitarianism, which is the defining pillar of classical liberalism, what we need to do what's best for the most amount of people. And if for the most amount of people, this particular strain of speech or something is destructive, they would shut it down. They've pretty much always done that. If you go against the crown, they would shut it down. Like let's take Oswald Mosley, who was the one fascist, the kind of a dissident element that came in pre-World War II Britain. Oswald Mosley was shut down ultimately because it's like, this is not utilitarian. It's not good for the it's not for the greater good. So classical liberalism is very, very tolerant, but when it starts diminishing the bottom line of the greatest good, it always shut it down. That's always been characteristic of it.
Yeah, you also have it like reducing to harm principle a lot of the time, and that's the dominant logic that it's operated on in the near past.
It's tough to argue. What I'm saying is that I'm not saying I am a neoliberal, but I'm saying it's tough to argue with that logic sometimes, because it's got not just the empirical results to back it up, but even intellectually, it's not easy. It's not easy. That's all I'm saying.
I agree. I'll tell you where I agree. I agree in terms of its efficiency.
Yeah.
I don't agree when it comes. I think the speed stuff is manifestly just not there.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been there for a long time.
Tell me,
but in terms of it,
tell me a freer speech society. Tell me a freer speech system or society than the ones that classical liberalism and neoliberalism.
No, no, I don't think there. I don't think there are. But they have they couch themselves as, for example, that we draw the line at the harm principle,
Yeah.
but they don't actually. Like the whole Holocaust denier stuff, and they're not consistent with it at all.
But it's not good for the bottom line, right? It's not good for the bottom line. It's not good for the bottom line to piss off and ostracize the most productive and the most intellectually inclined and the richest members of your society, which for the most part in the Anglo-American world have been Jews. So it's like, hey, listen, we're going to do them a favor. We're not going to go down this route. That still does not defeat market logic. That still is in line with market
See,
logic.
the problem with using a phrase like market logic, which we used to describe neoliberalism early as well,
Yeah.
is that if I go Adam Smithian market logic,
Yeah.
that's completely incongruent with financialization, right? Or the original market logic, the free hand of the market, if you really want to go there, rejected financialization, rent seeking, all of these things that neoliberalism is based on, fundamentally, it rejected them outright, right? So you can't just get away with using market logic as a term.
But tell me, if you talk about rent seeking, tell me an economy in the world that is more anti-rent seeking than America. None. Tell me one rent seeking industry in America. It's just not there.
Bro,
It's consistently,
all of
every major
healthcare,
industry. Huh?
all of healthcare, all of big tech, all
Big
of
tech is, but it's not. But big tech is not rent seeking. Big tech is the most unbelievably
big tech
competitive.
by techno feudalism.
I mean, fuck Yanis Varoufakis. He actually doesn't know what he's talking about with this.
Why not? Why doesn't it make sense?
Because big tech is not sitting on swaths and swaths of land and just collecting free
They're
rent.
sitting.
doing
That's the
nothing.
idea.
But they aren't-
The law.
but-
That's not
but-
the. Is
but
no one
I-
saying it's sitting on land. They're saying they're
But
sitting on
that's what
servers.
feudalism, but that's what feudalism implies, right? Big tech. If tomorrow Google says that I'm not going to be balls to the wall aggressive with AI, if I'm not going to put 100, 200 billion into AI, right? The market will eat me the up. There's no government protection for a Google. There's no government protection for OpenAI. Anthropic is coming out and saying, I have a better product. Then what? Market logic, you compete harder. There is the rent seeking inherently implies that, listen, this is uncompetitive. This is that I'm not going to do anything. I have monopoly over this commodity, and so I don't have to do anything with
The
it.
logic is that it's not uncompetitive, that it's unproductive. And the logic here is not that they're sitting on swaths of unproductive land, is that they're sitting on infinite amounts of cloud space, which are then rented out and used for rent, the same way land is rented out and used for rent. Even big landlords before invested in land and then kept repeating that same thing.
Yeah.
They also performed minimally administrative tasks, but even banks perform minimally administrative tasks when they're handing out mortgages.
Yeah.
But do they have an asset which they have in disproportionate amounts, which in an oligarchic way through regulation they are able to protect? Yes.
But not without extreme challenges and not without extreme centrifugal competitive pressures.
The AI thing is now a challenge to this order.
Yeah.
But for the past 20, 30 years, take Amazon, for instance, right?
Yeah.
Amazon has deep regulatory and competitive advantages because of the fact that it has always provided cloud services to the Pentagon, right?
But no, that's not true, man. When Amazon was the first into the data center cloud computing game in 2008, 2009, something like that, and at the time, most analysts, most people thought it was a stupid, silly move that everyone wrote off like, bro, you're just wasting your money. It's paying off today because they took that risk back then. That's a fact with Amazon. They were the first people to get into cloud computing. And that wasn't just, hey, I have this bunch of real estate that I've made a deal with the government. They were the first one into that space. And that's why they get to benefit off of that. That's the nature of competition. Shouldn't you be able to enjoy the risks that you take with that competition? Conversely, if you take someone like Microsoft in the 1990s was the pinnacle of capitalism, is the pinnacle company in the world. In the 2000s, under Steve Ballmer's CEOship, they went to bro. They really went down big time. And when Satya Nadella came back in and then optimized for cloud computing, software as a service type model, they invested hard into the gaming. They bought like a bunch of different game studios, this, that. They became a superpower again. But
but how does
there was
that?
still competitive pressure. Microsoft could have very bad. Let's take, like, we talk about the ones who survived. Let's talk about the ones that didn't survive. BlackBerry, Nokia. BlackBerry, Nokia were top
It's not
5
all
companies
tech.
in the
It's
world
not.
in 2000s. You know what I
It's
mean?
not all. It's not all tech, right? That logic is not a lot. It's about cloud space, about cloud capital. That's where a very large chunk of the revenues come from. I couldn't tell you what the exact amount is, but I know it's in the trillions or hundreds of billions.
That's the current technology.
Right?
That's the current technology.
And will AI replace it eventually? So, yes, that is a threat to it, 100%. Right?
But something will embrace AI as well at some point, right?
I mean, yes.
Perhaps.
Yes.
It's not unimaginable.
But again, this is just one industry, right? In defense contractors, shadiest business ever, all relies on government contracts, blackmail, wheeling and dealing with nefarious governments around the world. It's all government revenue.
I don't think
healthcare.
I'm saying intergovernment
insurance racket, healthcare insurance racket. Like, I mean, at some point you have to acknowledge the. So either America is an oligarchy or it isn't.
I would say.
And if it is an oligarchy, then there is rent-seeking behavior. That's a definition, part of the definition of an oligarchy.
But that's exactly the type of black and white thinking that we're literally making an episode that it doesn't have. It
doesn't have to be black and white. It just has to be intense or not intense.
No. I'm saying it can be an oligarchy. I accept that it is an oligarchy and it is a deeply unequal system. But it is not rent-seeking. It's still highly competitive.
So you're saying that that's then all? How is it?
It is highly competitive to make it in America, to make a business America. It's still that's factually true. It's highly fucking competitive. I mean, it's a highly competitive sphere.
So you're saying the oligarchs aren't engaging in rent-seeking behavior?
I'm not saying that no oligarch in the
no, I'm not saying that. But okay, obviously, I'm not saying that.
En masse, no, I don't think so. En masse, no. En masse, absolutely not. En masse, if you look at Palantir.
So the entire history of the history of, say, from the United Fruit Company to modern health, the modern health and health insurance racket, to the defense industry, to parts of big tech. You don't think that this is
the defense industry? It's so tough to make an argument that the companies are rent-seeking in the defense industry because you literally have proof that America is by far the strongest military in the world, and that is on the backs of their local defense industries. You can say what you want about Lockheed Martin. You can say what you want about Lockheed Martin. The F-35 and the F-22 are the greatest jets ever made. They deserve that $300-400 billion market cap.
On the back of government patronage. On the back of government patronage. By the way, just to like
where in the world
to situate
government patronage doesn't exist.
No, I know. I'm saying everywhere is an oligarchy thing. I'm saying it's like this everywhere. To say that America is an exception, I think, would be making a huge exception. This take, by the way, of yours is very uncommon in the sense that even a Milton Friedman, who is the biggest advocate for free markets you could possibly imagine, his entire take was not that America doesn't exist as an oligarchic, monopolistic, rent-seeking economy.
Rent-seeking, I disagree. The word rent-seeking, I don't agree with, because rent-seeking inherently implies that I have this untouchable asset that is not exposed to centrifugal competitive forces, and so I don't have to do anything with it. That is the definition of rent-seeking. If I am, let's say if I am a Pakistani Vadera and I've got, let's say, 20,000 acres of land and nobody can take away from me, I really have to do all with
no,
it.
But it doesn't.
And I'm
going
to be making 20-30 million whatever dollars a year based on bichare kisan rents. Like, that's very different.
It doesn't have to be.
This.
Just like you said, it doesn't have to be black and white there. Also, doesn't have to be black and white here. It doesn't have to be that there's no competitive pressure, which is something that I also didn't say. I said obviously there is some level of competition in everything. The point is, can you set barriers up high enough where it's difficult for people to enter? Can you gain rights over certain products or certain patents in an unfair way by lobbying the government? The most sophisticated, so to accept that America is an oligarchy, which it is, and is the most sophisticated oligarchy in the world, as the most sophisticated on paper lobbying in the entire world, to say that all of that happens and then the oligarchs are nice enough not to engage in rent-seeking behavior is an unimaginable.
I think we're ultimately disagreeing on what rent-seeking means. I think that's the root.
I'm not disagreeing unproductive labor. Or unproductive.
I just don't think they're unproductive. I think even with the defense industry you're citing, let's take the biggest defense.
So BlackRock buying $5 billion of Sunbelt real estate is not unproductive. It's the definition of unproductive.
I mean, depends on which perspective you look at it from, right? Because
No, no,
BlackRock's
that
primary
is the
because here's
definition
thing.
of rent seeking, no?
Here's the thing: BlackRock's primary job is to manage pension funds, right? They manage deep, big amounts of pension funds, and for those pension funds, if that's the best return possible for those funds, it's pretty sensible.
That is literally the logic of rent seeking and financialization.
I'm not saying it's perfect. We don't have.
No, no, it's not about perfect or imperfect. I'm saying that is what you just said is the definition of rent seeking. Like the literal definition of rent
The
seeking.
thing is that I think that rent seeking implies a certain degree of laziness and unearned money, which I still think you can't. I don't with BlackRock. I don't like BlackRock. I don't like Larry Singh. I don't like ESG. It's kind of gay.
No, no, you don't
But
have to like it to admit that this is rent seeking behavior.
No, because I think that rent seeking inherently implies some degree of laziness and just sitting on an advantage and not innovating upon
So-
that
so
advantage. If tomorrow BlackRock stopped giving the type of return that was, those pension funds would pull out money, they would put it in Fidelity, they would put it into Vanguard, they'd put it into
But
all,
the reason they're
myriad
able,
of other companies who are operating in the space.
you know, back on the very corporate nature of media, it's like, okay, I'm listening to you rail against the powers that be. I'm listening to you speak truth to power, but I know that you work for the guy, say at the Washington Post, who has like unlimited contracts with the CIA and with the
Jeff
Pentagon.
Bezos owns Washington.
Yeah, right, yeah. And Amazon Cloud Computing like provides services to
Yeah.
the Pentagon. And then at the same time, like, you know, you have this equivalent in Pakistan where it's like, yes, there are some legacy media houses started and owned by journalists still, but at the same time, you know which state is running which channel, which industry comes from, is he in real estate, is
Yeah.
he in education,
Yeah.
right? Will being a seat, a business owner who buys a media company always be a bad thing? No. It doesn't mean that you don't listen to those channels at all or that you shun them completely. What's important is to know where that information is coming from.
Yeah.
And if there's been a change in XYZ channel after the ownership changed,
Yeah.
why did that change? Where is that person's alignment?
Yeah.
Right?
Follow the money.
Follow the money. And ultimately, even if the most quote unquote perceived corrupt person says something which is true and reasonable, you should still listen to it because you're there for the fact of the matter, not the person.
Yeah.
But knowing that your information is colored by some sort of bias is important.
Yeah.
Right? And in a world where journalists often style themselves as rebels and freedom fighters,
Yeah.
it is often important to remind them and remind yourself that you are still working for the powers that be. You are literally working for the powers that be,
Yeah.
right? And even if you're breaking away from that, people deserve to know who and what you're working for.
Yeah.
And I think that's the bare minimum when it comes to people consuming media.
Yeah.
You should know where it's coming from.
You should know, but I mean, obviously the people making the content, the journalists or XYZ, would it's not in their favor. It's not in their interest to announce like, okay, this is where my loyalties lie. So that's not going to happen.
So-
and I think to some degree, it's like unreasonable for everyone. Maybe in broad stroke, yeah, like the big name that's like, okay, I know who butters Tucker Carlson or Hamid Mir's bread, makes sense. But like, you know, we come across reels and like TikToks of stuff, and we can't reasonably go through what everyone's paper trail and stuff looks like. So, given the kind of impossibility of completing what you're saying unconditionally, comprehensively, how the fuck do we navigate it?
Man, look, a Hamid Mir or an Asma Shirazi or a Naseem Zahra or a Harun Rashid or a, you know, all of these guys were really big in that is Harun Rashid.
Yeah.
No, all of these guys who are who are
Okay.
really big in the Pakistani mainstream,
Uh,
will they be able to tell you more accurately than the average Joe when the next government is coming or going?
yeah.
Whether X project will go through, whether you should put this politician's name on this project or not.
Probably.
These guys are going to have incredible takes. the best information, our journalistic class, like these Talat Hussains, the Umar Chimas, they're competent to an unreal level. I think that Pakistani journalism generally has a very high standard.
Yeah.
But are these people engaging in some serious post-political thinking? No. They are also not questioning the current order of things
Yeah.
as it stands. They are wittingly or unwittingly playing sides. They're stuck in either that post 18th Amendment consensus or the civil military binary or some limitation of the conventional Pakistani debate. They are not having first principles conversations. Now, look, these aren't people who are coming right out of the gate and saying, we're philosophers, listen to us, and we're going to tell you how to recast Pakistan in our image. Then that's not what they're doing. To a large extent, what their job description is, they're carrying it out pretty diligently, and I think we've got some of the best journalists in the world. But when you see a face-off between two political forces in Pakistan, and one of these journalists, one of these Handmaids, one of these titans who are like almost like they're institutional players in and of themselves, right? When they come and cast this as this battle between good and evil, where Westminster-style liberal democracy is the good, and any force that opposes it or aims to move past it is the evil.
Yeah.
It is therein that I find the problem, because then for the average consumer who does not have time in their busy lives or doesn't have the right guidance to go and consume political, post-political, philosophical content, they will truly start to view this as like this Armageddon-like end of the world situation where they'll get loose farmed.
Yeah.
Where either like, 21st century presentist democracy wins in Pakistan, or like we're just done. Like, that's the end all be all. They're then a victim and a child of the times.
Yeah.
My point being that these people who perceive themselves as questioning power, as speaking truth to power, are often playing the role of, they are the handmaids of the powerful. Often inadvertently, because they'll say, for example, we're not allowed to say everything on the media,
Yeah.
but we'll say 80%.
Yeah.
And like we were talking about earlier, that 80% to them will feel like, we've done as much as we could, but that serves the powerful, because a complete lid on anything being said would result in some sort of violent outpouring. 100% would wake people up and also result in some sort of violent outpouring. But 60-70% is just going to be like, अच्छा मैंने अपना गुस्सा निकाल लिया.
Consent, where like YouTube comment पे 2-3 गालियाँ लिख दो and बढ़ास निकालो अपने दिल से और फिर जाओ यार जाके सैरी करो.
धक्के खाओ फिर.
जाके सैरी करो.
Yeah.
I get where you're coming from. But I just don't see a solution for the masses, for the people who don't have time to really engage with ideas on first principle levels, and there's just no. If you're one of the lucky few who can, you should make use of that luxury, because truly it is a luxury. But then what's the you can't you can't make a law around this.
Bro, part of the present orthodoxy, which didn't exist until universal suffrage existed, until everyone was allowed to vote, is that every man, woman, and child over the age of 18 has to have a comprehensive view of your country and has to vote on
Okay,
it.
I'm with you on that. Like, I'm not a big democracy fan, but just for thought experiment, if we were to do a very big democracy, how would we decide who runs the place? Is it the most sovereign? Is it the most powerful? Because historical logic dictates that the sovereign is he who decides the exception, and the sovereign is he who has the most power, the most street power, military power, XYZ type of power.
Well, I think
So how would it work?
I think what matters more than the system is what precedes it, as in, are you coming in through revolution or institutional capture? I think those are two viable routes to enter, right? And usually it's a combination of both.
Yeah.
It's usually a build-up of institutional capture, and then there's like a revolutionary
Soft
moment,
revolution, yeah.
and then you
Yeah.
go into it. That is how you come into it. There is no secular validation. There is no godly force that is going to come down and tell you that this is the perfect way to run a government.
Yeah.
Right? Even people who have theocratic ideas are taking different bets on their version of what they think the divinely ordained form of government is.
Yeah.
Right? There's no one at the end of the day still is going to come down and tell you this is it.
What you very interesting point is the theocratic side of things, because the theocratic side of things are actually kind of ideological. They're actually
Yeah.
playing on ideological levels. They're
100%.
not talking about yeah
Value
policy,
neutral.
not saying that bullshit. They're not saying this. They're playing on ideological levels. I would want to see the more educated, Western educated, English medium class to engage with some of that stuff as well.
Yeah.
Because I think that ultimately there's a certain I mean, look, we can talk about like power dynamics till the sun comes up, but there's a certain type of people who will ultimately be the short callers and stuff. Like the way we're describing in America right now, it's your these multi-billionaire oligarchs or these multi-billion fund managers and stuff. So I think there's a quite strong necessity of your economic elite and your military elite to be ideological enough in their prescriptions and really be hard-headed with it. Like your business elite does not have to come with this this perspective of hey, मैं अपने काम से काम रखूंगा, I'm just going to make
I
as much
agree.
money as possible. For them, it makes absolute sense in the world, and I will never disparage them for doing that, because that's the logical thing to do in a lot of ways. But in order to break out of to have a post-political thinking, you need the combination of capital and ideological freshness. And nothing
Absolutely.
presents that like a counter elite class or a very ideologically motivated elite class, the way we see it in America, the way we see in a lot of these places. A military as well. I mean, the military angle of things, institutional angle of things, cannot be discounted.
And man, there's so much diversity on the theological, political end of things as well. So yes, in Pakistan historically, you've had the Dr. Isrars and the Maududis. You also have throughout the Middle East and the West, Sunni secularists, for instance.
Yeah.
They want to create some sort of so. For example, what modern secular government is to Christianity, where it's culturally Christian, they want to make a state that's culturally Muslim. So it's not theological, but it is Islamic. It is Muslim, right? So why doesn't that strain exist in Pakistan?
Yeah.
Right? I'm not advocating for it. I'm just saying that you would imagine in a
Yeah.
country where there was true ideological depth and where there was.
There's potential to galvanize the people with some of that line of thinking.
And my point is just specifically that there is, but just the point I'm trying to make is, if you've got the Islamists on one end and you've got the seculars on the other, why doesn't that Sunni secularism exist?
Yeah.
Because you're living in the binary.
Yeah.
You've never bothered to try and arrive at some sort of compromise, right?
Yeah.
Or some more Sufi-oriented political approaches that then say that
But aren't the Sufis too funamaxing to ever really get down to it?
that's kind of built into the political approach there, which is then basically saying that we're like fana and batin meaning maxing.
Yeah.
So like ultimately the internal compass is what matters. You focus on principles of
Yeah.
ihsan, which is compassion and service,
Yeah.
as opposed to theological decrees.
Yeah. Not to disparage it anyway. I think there's a huge
There's
amount of
some merit there.
Huge amount of merit there.
Yeah.
But it's just not politically oriented.
I agree.
Because of the nature of what they're engaging in. So that's kind of tough.
That kind of aligns with the Sunni secularists in the sense that a lot of their theological proclivities will be the same, and they're both basically, as opposed to the classical Islamists like Jamaluddin Afghani or an Iqbal or a Dr. Srar, they're basically saying that embody some Islamic principles but don't legislate everything into hard and fast law.
Yeah.
So the Sunni secularists and the Sufi Maxers will kind of see eye to eye on that, I imagine.
Perhaps.
But yeah, like there's a world of ideas and you don't see any of it, which is just kind of bothersome.
Yeah.
So now, we bring it back to this, and we've kind of been leaning into this already. This formation of identity,
Yeah.
this seedling of original thought,
Yeah.
what do you think? Where does that come from?
So I'm saying on the first principle basis, right? You've got to kind of really be you're gonna individuate a little bit. You gotta kind of understand what makes your psyche tick, what makes your psyche stabilize. Like when you make a decision, like are you making it on the basis of no one person is gonna ever manifest only one thing, but it's like I know like my psychological motivators are let's say it's status and control and like personal agency, or maybe it's like, attachment, belonging, I want to be part of a tribe. Maybe it's like meaning and narrative, I want to feel like I'm bringing justice to this world.
So figure out what
I'm
makes
writing-
you tick.
Figuring out essentially what makes you tick. First of all, you got to kind of figure out what makes you tick. Okay, so like for me personally, it's like I'm like a bit Nietzschean, and I'm a bit like inclined toward individualism. So it's like I know what makes my psyche tick. It's like, status, esteem, agency. Like I like these ideas. These ideas broadly appeal to me. So where I can find these kind of things, these elements, it doesn't mean that like belonging doesn't matter to me. It doesn't mean that truth and coherence and all these other big platonic ideas don't matter to me. But I know push comes to shove, these are kind of the things that really resonate with me. When I even watch like a movie, or if I see a popular figure or a celebrity who's embodying these ideals, I get energized. Like I'll get energized watching Tom Brady and Michael Jordan, and then Napoleon, and then Nietzsche's philosophy, and then the one
Batman.
Batman.
You've talked about
or like
Batman
One Piece,
extensively.
or it's like the one love story I really like is La La. Have you watched La La Land?
I haven't. No.
La La Land is fucking fantastic. It's the best love movie, romantic movie ever
Yeah?
made. And the point of it is that these two people deeply love each other, but they're extremely ambitious people. And in order to fulfill their ambition, at some point they realize that it's not going to work between us, and they happily walk. I mean, they begrudgingly walk away from each other to pursue their dreams. And then 10 years on down the line, they have a chance meeting where they both become highly successful in their field, and it's a bittersweet moment where they've achieved everything that they wish to achieve, but at the cost of each other's company,
Bro, spoiler alert दे देते यार.
Spoiler,
मैं
okay,
movie
whatever.
कैसे
La La
देखूं?
Land, okay.
But that sounds really interesting.
There's a reason why something
Yeah.
like that would appeal to me.
Yeah.
Because I'm describing myself as somebody who's like really, I care about like, winning, control, agency, status in some ways, self-esteem maxing in some ways. So it's quite obvious why a story like that would appeal to me. Even though like I'm not a very attachment group collective type of person who romantic stuff would normally appeal to, but that appealed to me. So first and foremost, I think it's very important to kind of be in touch with yourself, like what makes your psyche tick, and really build around
This
that.
is a really difficult thing to do.
Yeah, but you gotta build your library.
Yeah, that takes time.
It does, absolutely. You gotta build your library of media and culture and artistic proclivities in line with that. Like it's very difficult for someone like me to resonate deeply with like decolonial thought. Not to say not to say that there aren't some great things, there absolutely are. But just based upon what my psyche is and what appeals to me, it's tough for me to like sit and feel really resonant with
Because
the
you're like
story of a victim.
You're like, you got conquered. You shouldn't have gone conquered then. You shouldn't have gone conquered
in a
then.
very crude way. Yeah,
Yeah,
like that's my gut reaction. I'm like, that's the laws of the universe. The stronger force wins. Not saying it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
That's just how my
Yeah.
psyche ticks. That's just what I like. And I think there's plenty of people who will resonate with that. Plenty of guys, definitely the looks maxing community in some ways. The pickup art, whatever. There's a reason why even I have a soft spot for some of these things. It's like, yeah, I can kind of see, like, you've got to overcome yourself. Like, it's on the basest of levels to the highest of philosophical levels. This idea
Okay,
appeals to me.
question. What I find to be interesting here
Yeah.
is my approach is slightly different. So
Yeah.
I'll ask you what you think about that.
Yeah.
My first instinct, actually, let's leave me out of it. There's the things that have been kind of pre-programmed into you since your childhood. Maybe a shrink can come in and tell you, Arbaz, these are your experiences. This is why you value this. This is why you value that. And this is your animal brain.
Yeah.
At what point is this just you trying to satisfy your animal brain? And at what point is this you transcending your animal brain, figuring out a set of independent ideas, truths, whatever you want to call them, that you would like to embody, even if they kind of stray away from your base instincts?
See, here's the thing.
What's that?
See, here's the thing. When you say transcending your animal brain, I don't think you can transcend your animal base in the sense that you can be separate to it. The way you transcend your animal brain is by building your entire system, your rational, logical system around that very animal base. So for me, I am not even slightly disconnected from my animal brain. I've just built my entire system, my logical, my ideological, my philosophical filter based around that.
That's so tough, bro.
Yeah, that's how I think of it. Like, that's how you can transcend it by like I'm deeply in touch with it. So when I see those elements exemplified in the left or the right, in the liberals or the conservatives or whatever, let's say Peter Thiel or Batman, I'm gonna like all of it. For people who are very, very stuck in binary thinking, liking Peter Thiel, Nietzsche, Batman, the revolutionary aspects of Marxism, the Maimon entrepreneurial spirit, they might not make necessary sense.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan and Tom Brady might not necessarily make sense. But when you're viewing it through my filter, where it's like I'm valuing on my animal brain level, I'm valuing this stuff the most. None of these things are in contention.
And how
with
does
each
one
other.
do that? One does that by prioritizing your own development and having the self-esteem. When
Yeah.
you look at Marx, say, I don't like the ressentiment aspect.
I don't like the resentment.
I like the
don't like the
revolutionary
collectivist
aspect.
aspect. I don't like the leveling of the individual it does, but I do like the revolutionary spirit, which embodies the aspect of increase agency, break the old world order if it doesn't work
And
for you, and
over
make
here-
something that works for you. And I deeply resonate with that aspect of
And
it.
being defiant, being rebellious, having the right kind of, having some deferring to authority, but only in some measure.
Yeah.
Right? Knowing when to say no is really important.
Yeah.
Because for the average person, like, I've always been in social science spaces,
Yeah.
and the horrific amount of people, the majority of people that I studied alongside,
Yeah.
who would read one philosopher or one writer and make that their entire personality,
Yeah.
was just, it made me so worried. But
Yeah.
I was like, dude, like, this is like, might sound like a bit like, I don't know, like soft of me, but like, dude, you mean more than that as a human being. You have your own self, you have your own psyche. You have the right, you don't have to become Sylvia Plath, right? You don't have to become Marx overnight.
I disagree.
You can choose.
I disagree, and I'll tell you why. Because maybe these people's psyches are stabilizing around a community, a sense of belonging, and the sense of belonging they get by being hardliners to a certain sect. That's why I think, in a lot of ways, the most blue-haired of SJWs and the most radical of Islamists, they kind of have the same psychological mechanism that they're pursuing to do what they do. Like, the British.
No, but
kid-
don't they
the
fall
British
under the
kid-
binary that we've been reading against?
They are falling under the binary, but the way to get out of that binary, what I'm saying is that you need to recognize that's your psychic motivator, that's your psychic base, and when you understand that, then even if you lie on the British ISIS jihadist end of spectrum, you can still resonate with what maybe the SJW is kind of doing, because they have the same psychological instinct as you do. So you can find value even in them.
No, I'm just trying to
It's what
understand what
I'm-
part.
what I'm-
Yeah, no, I get.
is
But
what I'm
what
trying to
what
say.
part of what I said were you disagreeing with in particular? Just to like,
Huh?
because you said you were disagreeing with what part.
What part I
exactly?
disagree with is that it's like, yes, they're in those binary thinking, but I think those binary thinkings that are very, very group oriented might be what they need for their psyche. And that's fine. A lot of people need that. A lot of people value community and a sense of belonging above all else. A lot of people are not fit and they don't feel comfortable standing out. They would rather fit in.
But
And
isn't
if
what
you
we're
are one of
arguing
those-
for? Isn't what we're arguing for? Like when we say individuate and find your place.
Yeah.
Right. Just to like
Yeah.
No, when people start individuating, like we're still human beings with human concerns, and we'll still fall on some 99% of us will still fall on some recognizable part of the spectrum.
Yeah.
It'll just be a more sophisticated, complex, and mixed up combination of things.
Absolutely.
Right? So you won't necessarily lose community.
Yeah.
Right? There'll be in the world where all these people are individuated,
Yeah.
won't the point be to have differing beliefs and still have a community?
Platonically, yes. In a platonic ideal sense, yes. But here's the thing. What I'm trying to come at is that, look, if your deepest need is that sense of community, and that sense of community sometimes requires you to sacrifice some degree of individual thinking, then I think the way you individuate is precisely by doing that in a way that works for you. And recognize when that mechanism is happening with groups that you don't agree with, that they are kind of psychologically the same as
Just
you.
to clarify,
Yeah, yeah. Do you get what I mean?
Are you saying that? Are you talking about like a kind of a political compromise kind of thing? Would that fit it?
Not even. I'm not even talking about a political compromise in the sense that, hey, we can work together. Like we have this, we can find a policy agreement. But I mean more in the sense that you are not very, very different to I, and when you can recognize that you are not very, very different to I, extremism as a natural byproduct will go down.
Yeah.
That's where I can see it. Where it's like, if, like I said, if the if the fob ISIS jihadi and the blue haired SJW can both look at each other and like, I can see that you ultimately just have a need to belong and look at each other. It's like that our psyches are kind of ticking in the same way.
My issue
That's kind
with
of a big
that
step.
my issue with that is, even though in principle
Yeah.
I agree with the fact that they have some similarity to them, in the sense that they're going for this utopian fix for the world, to
Yeah.
put it simply.
Yeah.
Inbuilt and a necessary part of these particular worldviews is a rejection of accommodating that kind of other.
But wouldn't it be better, like even more? Wouldn't it be more advantageous for their goal, their manifesto, to deeply understand the psychological makeup of their rivals when they're not very, very
But do you
different?
think a literal fob jihadi is ever capable of understanding that?
No, that's what I'm saying. It's not for most of. Is it like a solution like this is not for most people, but
Yeah.
those people who have the time and have the ability to kind of reckon with themselves. I think it's like you need to really get at the roots of what makes you tick.
But
and when
I would
you
actually
get to the root of what makes you tick, you can kind of recognize it anywhere. Is what
I
is what
would,
in broad strokes mean to say. If
okay.
if you're a deep romantic and you're really like galvanized by romance and family and belonging, you can find romance and family and belonging in the most conservative of Afghan tribal families to the most liberalized of California hedonism. You can find it both places. You know what I mean? And I think that's in terms of what media you should consume, in terms of what culture you should consume, I think that's a good place to be.
So another layer I wanted to kind of add to this. So first I'm going to make an objection, and then I'm going to answer it myself.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So one of the questions that comes to my mind is when I think of the individuation approach.
Yeah.
If you're saying that everyone's going to figure this out for themselves and how they feel, etc., one would possibly think, as someone who believes in religion, objective morality, hard truths, why am I individuating? Why am I looking for certain versions of the truth when I have the truth in front of me, right? So, does this system of finding yourself or finding your opinions, is that precluded for people who already believe that they have objective truths at hand?
Absolutely not.
I actually don't think so. The reason being specifically, well, I consider myself one of those people. I consider myself finding hard truths and living by those truths in religion, right? I think for me, and that's why, like, for example, right? If you take, even in the most literal way, like Jung as the individuation character, and then some people who wrote about him, like Mary Louise von Franz, said that Islamic thinking presents a more closed and stable set of symbols.
Yeah.
And it doesn't allow for endless innovation when it comes to truths and ideas.
Yeah.
And I subscribe to that idea.
Yeah.
But even in there, even for someone who subscribes to eternal truths, theological divine truths, even there, because like just look at the amount of sectarianism you have in Christianity, in Islam, and every major world religion. There is no closed end finality even there. Yes, I believe that there are objective limits to theological thinking, even my own. But within that circle, is there a lot of room for disagreement, self-discovery, and how you in
Is there a
particular?
broad enough Overton window?
100%.
Absolutely, yeah.
Bro,
Why shouldn't there
we
be?
live in a country where, despite the fact that over the years we've had, tussles and disagreements, we've got a very diverse religious population that lives together on most days in relative harmony and peace, and which is one of the best things about our country, right? And I would say that, like, take like these madrasas and institutions of religious learning, they disagree on a theological level on some pretty intense stuff.
Yeah.
Yet at the end of the day, when someone Eid announced or something's happening, they all sit together in the same table, which is pretty based.
Yeah.
So you've got this wide world of inquiry on technicalities, on beliefs, and beyond. And I think this, at the end of the day, is something that would benefit everyone.
Yeah.
If you've got a theological belief system, you might already have the benefit of already having a stable core, right? But then if you take an intellectual approach, you will know that there's certain not your core ideas, but there's certain worldviews, superstitions, beliefs that have been ingrained into you with your immediate surroundings that you will need to innovate on, have some trade-offs on. So I think it's very much a part
I
of it.
don't see why it
Yeah.
can't work within that structure.
Yeah, I think it can.
Absolutely, absolutely. And even when it comes to like individuating, right? I think the implication that individuating makes is that you have to be this absolutely unique maxed person. I don't think that's the case.
Yeah.
I don't think that. I think individuation ultimately comes with making yourself whole. And if yourself, the core of yourself requires some of these things, and it has this deep need, like say for you, suppose a system of closed symbols is a deep need for you, then absolutely you should pursue it. Individuation is not let me rebel against that the way a Nietzsche would to try to discover my own truth. Your entire individuation process was that how can I fortify this and build
Yeah.
this tower even stronger.
Yeah.
So I disagree with the the midwit understanding
Yeah.
of what individual.
But it's like reject.
Reject, no, that
Yeah.
make something new. No. It's do what
You don't
make-
necessarily have to do
You
that.
don't. You decide that for yourself, and you see what works for yourself. That's the basis of it. And when
And
you
the
and coming-
Jungian system actually kind of has an answer to this, which is it's good that we've used the term individuate in particular. Like where I was also trying to say earlier, there's still going to be a limit to which most people fall on. There's still going to be a spectrum.
Yeah.
Because there's certain human realities that our ideas will always correspond to.
Yeah.
Right? So, for example, Jung's system of archetypes actually is a great filler for this logic. That everyone has, the tyrannical mother or the benevolent father or this king or all of these symbols which he says these archetypes are recurring in the form of different symbols throughout space and time in all different human societies.
Yeah.
That kind of becomes the landscape of possible ideas that you can possibly inhabit, and almost all of humanity will be playing within that playing field.
Yeah.
Right? So you will still fall onto some part of the spectrum that is legible to the other people around you. Right? You will still be kind of closed into what you have access to. So, for example, if you're in Pakistan, and you're in close proclivity to certain kinds of thinking, those are still more likely to have an effect on you. And when you finally come out with your newly individuated self, it's more likely to be legible, culturally and philosophically legible to the people around you than someone, say, from like the Incan civilization a few hundred years ago.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. We don't live on an
So we're not
island
saying that, every man is an island kind of thing.
no,
Not at all.
absolutely not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever taken the Myers-Briggs Jungian like archetype test?
That INFJ type.
What did you get?
Man, I don't remember. I have done it, but it was something like
I always get like between INTJ and ENTJ. So N, I don't know what N stands for, but T is thinking, J is judging. But either I'm extroverted or introverted about it based on the year, I guess.
Interesting.
I always get that.
I think that changes a lot. The
Man,
extroverted introverted thing in the course of your life changes a lot.
Yeah, the thing is that I've no friends who've taken it and gotten totally different ones, but I've been like kind of enjoying this for the past like 7-8 years. It's always INTJ or ENTJ,
Interesting.
depending on my mood, how
Interesting.
social or antisocial I'm feeling.
Interesting.
It's
I'll take
fun.
it. I'll take it.
Yeah, it's astrology for boys, man.
So, so when you think you've got this stable core, you've kind of crystallized into something, into someone who is legible to yourself and to the world as a thinking being,
That you have a
has
base.
some set of ideas, you have some sort of base. Now, when someone comes and tells you that this vague idea about administration and governance, or some vague legal principle that's like, I don't know, Jeremy Bentham came up with a couple of hundred years ago, is unquestionable law and you have to treat it as if it was divinely revealed, hopefully you will have the audacity not to disagree for the sake of disagreeing, but wondering why this person is trying to force this man-made convention upon you.
Yeah, absolutely. In that sense, like then what you have is that you have your own really, really strong filter to run things by, and that's exactly the thing. Coming back to media, right? Uh, it's not possible to trace everyone's paper trail. It's not possible to understand where everyone's bread is being buttered. But if you have a strong enough sense of self, you can kind of pick up without that even.
Absolutely.
And even if there's the ulterior motive, it stops mattering as much because it's like, it works for me, it doesn't work for me. We live in a post-truth world, like all the BuzzFeed midwits like to tell us, and that's true. I do think we live in a post-truth world. So why don't we just uh build as much as possible upon our own
The
and pick and choose what we like?
the
around it?
answer for me becomes something like, I think this is true at least for people who are politically and engaged in the world of ideas, is that on the one hand, you have this individual journey that consists of prayer, meditation, sorting yourself out,
Yeah,
making yourself less susceptible to being propagandized, being stuffed into binaries, all of these things. And then also engaging, and that is the part that operates within.
yeah,
And then completely without,
yeah,
which is structural analysis of the world.
yeah,
So it's a completely differing attitude.
yeah,
So it may not seem congruent at first,
yeah.
but that combination of figuring yourself out and then following the money, ownership structures, maybe who's on whose yacht in Corfu and which Rothschild he's hanging out with.
Yeah.
Like all of those things also do matter.
Yeah.
Right?
And maybe even the Rothschild yacht part doesn't matter to you. And if it doesn't, all power to you. Maybe you just don't give a about that. And if you truly come to that conclusion, I think that's also fine, man. Why does everyone have to care about the same 10 things? You know what I mean?
I mean,
I mean, you and I
if you
uniquely
opt out,
you and
yeah.
I
If you're
are
like hermit
yeah.
maxing, then yeah.
You're hermit maxing, or it's just like, man, this doesn't make me
In
happy.
that world, yeah.
I've got one life, man. I've got maybe 70, 80 years if I'm lucky. If this is just not what I'm into,
Yeah.
and fuck it.
If you've got the Sufi
then
orientation.
then I have no right to call you a midwit. I have no
Yeah.
right to tell you that you're wrong. I like this, so I do it.
No, I agree.
Not
Like,
because I'm better than anyone.
if you take like this as like the Iqbal Sufi versus Prophet archetype, where the
Yeah.
Sufi is like, keeps to himself, fana baka, fixes his life and passes on to the next realm.
What they're prophesizing is, man, you don't have to give a fuck about all of this. Let's stop caring about this stuff. Let's care about things that actually matter. It doesn't have to be that.
Yeah, so
big.
I'm
It
saying
doesn't have to be the
I
Mr.
don't
Potter
agree
band
with
aid.
it.
Yeah.
I don't agree with it. I also think there's active harm in that kind of thinking. But am I so convinced of the finality of my heuristics and approach that I'm gonna say that they're bad people or they're net negatives? Absolutely not. If that's what tickles your funny bone at the end of the day, it is what it is.
Yeah, you know that schizo journey meme?
Yeah.
The 15 stages.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
at the end of it, it's like, yeah, I kind of know everything, but I'm a master of two worlds. I'll be normie with you normies, but I know everything, but I don't have to tell everything to you normies. I don't have to perform my schizoness the way
Yeah,
we
which
do.
is like now I remember.
way
So
we do,
recently,
yeah.
recently I met someone at like a dance practice for a wedding, and they were like, so like, do you debate a lot? Do you talk about these things a lot? I was like, and that's like the peril of like talking about this on camera. People assume that we're just like always like this and never chill. But I had to tell them, I was like, yo, like that's like my outlet for it.
Yeah.
And maybe some other times, like this is not my life.
Yeah.
It's a big
Yeah.
part of my life. This is not what I do 24/7.
Yeah, most
Like
of
I
the
have a
time
job,
most-
bro.
yeah,
I have a
most
day
of-
job.
People ask me like, what's your scene? I'm like, honestly, I just feel like I need a creative outlet.
Yeah.
I just need a creative outlet, and I do this. This is my art. Bitch.
How do you feel when someone asks you if you're doing this full time?
I'm fine with it. I mean, they don't know me. They don't know what I do. So it's a fair.
So
It's a
I
fair-
think there's nothing wrong with
Yeah,
like doing
I
it full
don't get
time.
offended
But
by it
like,
by any means. But I tell them like, no, I run an actual business. I work an actual scene. This is just a passion project that I really care about, and that's why I'm doing it.
and like someone like even recently asked me, they're like, so and this is someone like I like, but I haven't like met them in a long time, and they're just like, so like, is this what you do full time? And I was like, if I did do this full time, I wouldn't be ashamed of it, but I don't. It's like the third thing that I do. But
I mean, plenty of people do this full time and they've made a killing on it, huh?
Yeah,
If
yeah.
if that's the
Yeah.
filter you want to run it through, so I don't think there's anything wrong with doing anything full time.
no, absolutely,
But
not, absolutely.
yeah, it's not what we do full time.
Yeah.